Good morning. Welcome everybody to our virtual workshop. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Diaz and I'm the Education Program Manager at Trees Atlanta. Our mission is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forest by planting, conservation, and education. We host events year-round. Check out our website for more information. During this time, we're hosting our education programs via Zoom and online. If you have a question or comment that you'd like to ask the speaker, please use the chat tool and the Q&A tool to direct questions to the speaker. I'll be the moderator during the workshop, and I'll be sharing these questions with the speaker. There'll be opportunities to ask questions throughout the workshop. As we're exploring this new format, this virtual education format, we will love your feedback. You will receive a survey email after this class, and we will appreciate any comments, suggestions that you can give us. Also, if you'd like to share with us some ideas on what classes you'd like to see, especially during this time. Our speaker, Scott Braslow, is going to be teaching 2 more workshops, one on June 13 and one on June 27. If you'd like to access and sign up for them, please visit treesatlanta.org/calendar. And to stay in touch with what's happening with the organization and to follow up on upcoming events, please sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. So our speaker today is Scott Braslow. He is a volunteer with Trees Atlanta, and we will be covering a few points today. You're gonna see that he's gonna be doing an introduction. He's gonna be talking about some supplies needed for a project like the one he's gonna be doing. And then instructions. He'll also mention the factors to consider and how to take care of the critical root zone. And there'll be opportunities for questions throughout the workshop. So please use the chat tool to ask those questions. And I wanted to share with you some photos of before and after Scott's property. He's recording this workshop from his house. He lives about 3 miles north from Decatur. So you can see that over 20 years that he's been living in his property and maintaining and taking care of the trees, you see how the canopy has increased. And he'll explain a lot more about these. And we hope that you get inspired on protecting your trees as well. So now I will leave you with Scott, who's going to be sharing more with you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Before I go any further, one thing to check, Andrew, my wonderful camera guy, suggested pinning his video feed because you're just going to be, the video is going through his phone. It's the one called Trees Atlanta.
Yes, we can see you, Scott, and we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, I've got some notes in front of me. Certainly speaking from the heart here, so bear with me. I'm new to the virtual experiment here also, but I'm really excited that that all of you folks joined me this morning. I'm in my front yard. As you saw from some of the pictures, the yard used to be mostly grass, and I really I became quite the plant nut as I learned more and more about trees. As I volunteered and did more and more plantings, my yard became my playground. I've got about 80 trees now. They're not all planted from a container. Some of them are from seed. Anyways, I have a lot of trees to experiment on, and today's talk is about the critical root zone. I chose this as, I guess, one of the topics I wanted to go over, wanted to talk about, because it really is it is the most important part of a tree. We all, whether you're in Atlanta or if you're elsewhere, we all appreciate the big trees. I think most of the folks that are on the phone are probably tree lovers already. You appreciate the big trees. I'm in awe of the big trees. 20 years later, I'm no less impressed by large specimens of trees. But today's lesson is not about the big trees. It's about me just using this tree as an example. I think the more that people understand the critical root zone and understand ways that they can make it healthier, and the more they can protect this space and appreciate this space, the happier even their older trees are. Your old trees throughout your property, the old trees in the city parks or whatever, they all appreciate the same mulch. So anyways, sorry, I'm getting off pace. Anyways, what we're going to cover today, quickly, why you mulch. That's one of the things I'm going to go talk about. Like what is it about mulch? Why do we choose mulch? Why do we even decide to mulch? Why is mulch better than just having grass growing around your tree? I want to talk about that. The other is how you mulch. You know, I think most of us, if you've done volunteer projects or if you've just gotten advice from a friend or from a neighbor, we know that we're used to seeing the donut style mulching circle that goes around a tree. I think most folks know that the critical root zone is the space that is closest to the trunk. And I'll quickly just read, not that most of you need it, but the critical root zone is just from the handy Google, is the area of soil extending from the tree trunk where roots required for future tree health and survival are located. Anyways, so for this tree right here, this is extending at least 2 or 3 feet from the base of the tree. This right here is a blackjack oak, although sometimes folks would argue that red oaks are notoriously hybridizing with other red oaks, so it actually might be a black oak, but it's one of the trees that I planted as a youngster. Probably wasn't more than a foot tall when I first planted it, and so I'm just using it as an example. Anyways, I'm going to jump to the other thing. The next thing I wanted to speak to is all of you that are watching. I care about. I want to give something back, not just to people that might have a lot more experience with trees, and I'm certainly hoping I can add something to what you do in your own yards, but also the novices, folks that maybe it's their first tree or they haven't got a lot of trees in their yard. I'm hoping I can teach them something about the importance of this space around every tree, whether it be a small tree or a big tree. So everything I'm showing you here, it's for all trees. Again, I'm on Claremont Road, a really busy road. And so when I first started this, like I said, I planted like 80 trees. It was about planting lots of trees, trying to build a barrier. And so I think one of the things that was important that that I did was I had healthy trees. I know that, sorry, I'm getting a little bit off. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and you guys are, I certainly want to encourage questions from any of you. I really am hoping to teach all of you something, whether it be the novice planters or for some of you that I might even know. I know that some of the folks on the call are people that I've even volunteered with in the past. Anyways, sorry. Why do I care? Why I care mostly is the big trees. I think the more we learn about the small trees, the more we actually know about the big trees. And truthfully, the reason why I think I care the most is because I really just love planting trees. For me to be giving credit for any tree's health is the greatest success that I can tell. I've got neighbors in my neighborhood, 8 different neighbors that have that I've I wouldn't say I've that have joined me in just an appreciation of trees and wanting to plant more trees. And it makes me feel so good that they give me a call, that they ask for my advice, that I that I stop by their properties and help them mulch their trees. I help them. Uh, I planted trees in my mom's yard in Florida, my sister's in North Carolina, and like I said, numerous neighbors just walking distance from my house. I don't know. I just I'd written down an explanation as to why I care so much. It's I guess I'm getting lost on my own passion for this.
Oh, hey, Scott.
Sorry, Michelle. Go
Yeah,
ahead, please.
so how long have you been a volunteer with us?
I've been a volunteer about 15 years. Yeah, I would say that over the years I've planted hundreds of trees, certainly in my yard, but all across the city. And when it comes to every planting, I really I think what's something I don't know that I own, that I love, is that every single tree I plant, I have the potential to influence and make sure that it's going to grow up strong. To just plant a tree, quickly mulch it, and go off and forget about it isn't something that I like to do. I really, adopt every single tree. All these neighbors that I just mentioned that I planted trees in their yard, I've adopted those trees. I've adopted those neighbors. I'm hoping that not only do I show you something more about how you might mulch your tree better in the future, but it might help inspire you to help your neighbors, to share what you've learned, so that a neighbor that has a tree that maybe isn't being mulched, maybe you could encourage them to do so.
I think that's great and very inspiring for every like staff and volunteers on the chat. Yeah. And the people on the chat agree. Some of them are more new to these topics and they are here to learn. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
No, yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, sometimes I wish I could just have you all over the house. I mean, this virtual meeting was in lieu of someone visiting my house, but it's been my dream forever to, not necessarily to be on video, but to share what I'm doing with other folks. What I'm doing here, I want you to come over and see, not because I want to be applauded for what I'm doing, but because I think I have some really good ideas. I don't know if any of you joined the Trumperary workshop a couple weeks ago, but one thing you'll notice that I'm doing in my yard is I'm utilizing lots of big pieces of wood. Unfortunately, I've lost some really big oak trees over the years, but when I've done so in the last 10 years even, is when a tree gets lost, I keep all that wood and I'm repurposing it throughout my garden. Okay, so that's something you're going to see. I've got these big chunks of wood, and you've also got lots of rocks. I know not everyone has just rocks laying around that they can use, but the point isn't necessarily like, I don't want you to go buy rocks or necessarily find wood. I want you to utilize the wood that's already there. I want you, next time you see a stack of wood on the side of the road because someone's had a tree cut down, to maybe consider grabbing some of those pieces of wood and using them in your own space around your trees. So, my open's a little rocky right there, but one of the things we're doing today is to do I'll call it an extreme mulch makeover. I had lots of fun names. This is a tree that wasn't just bare of any mulch. I've just kind of cleared it out because I'm gonna redo it. I think whenever you mulch a tree, when you planted a tree and you mulch it, you don't just forget about it. Every year you should be going back. If it's in your own yard, I'm sure most of you go out and visit your tree on a regular basis. You make sure that mulch isn't caked up against the trunk. Most of you may know this. For those who don't, that's one of the rules you don't do. You don't mulch. You don't bury your trunk. You don't bury the tree. Anyway, so let me see if all right, so this is a blackjack oak. I still think it's really actually black oak. We were gonna, Andrew might get a close-up picture of these big, beautiful leaves. If anyone on the chat wants to have a closer look at the leaf and take a guess, I'm more than happy. Maybe we'll do that in a second. What makes me think it's a hybrid? Andrew's been kind enough to ask a good question. The reason why I think it's a hybrid is because red oaks have like anyone that I've trusted, and there's a lot of folks certainly at Trees Atlanta that have a lot more experience about the different species of trees than I do. It's long been known that red oaks are promiscuous. It's a term that Greg used, if any of you know Greg, and I always thought it was just I love it. I love the thought that the trees out in the wild are constantly crossbreeding, and the leaves and the characteristics of each tree, there's a variety. You get different types of canopy depending on where your tree is, depending on the kind of sunshine it's getting. One of the things that I'll try and mention in a second, and Andrew, please hit me if I'm getting behind schedule, but I think the appreciation, before we even get into the mulch, okay, when we look at these low limbs like this, these are so important. They're important on a young tree, absolutely, and they're important on the big trees. And the reason is because you get shade. Right here, you're not seeing it happen yet, but this is only I think a 9-foot tree, but it's already providing shade, and this grows larger as these lower branches, when I leave them and let them grow, they will provide much needed shade to help cool the roots and lessen the evaporation that's happening. So that's even before the mulch. Okay. Anyways, I'll actually use that to jump right into this test case and a quick review of why we mulch. I started at the very beginning saying that I would talk about why we mulch. I think as I go through these, they're easy to understand, even if you're a newbie. And I think some of these maybe even people forget about. The first thing is to reduce evaporation. Okay, I think that's a no-brainer. That once we cover this space, okay, the roots. I think as we know, roots are probably 2-3 inches below the surface right here, and you've got a tap root on an oak tree also. So you've got lots of roots going on in here. I'm trying my best not to stomp around in here. In general, you don't want to have a lot of traffic in this space, and so that's one of the things that I'm going to mention in 1 second. So reduce evaporation. The second thing, weed and grass suppression. I think most of us have used mulch around our trees just because we were trying to discourage the grass growing close to the trunk. The reason why you don't want grass growing up close to the trunk, for different reasons. One, it's competing with the water, okay? The other reason I think is actually quite important, and that is if you've got a lawn, then you potentially have someone mowing the lawn and you have someone using a weed eater. If you have grass growing up close to your trunk, then they're up there potentially weed eating close to the trunk, potentially damaging the bark of the tree. That's something you don't want to do. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail on that, but anyways, suppressing the weeds and grass is something I think we could all say, that's great. Okay. And it's certainly important. Next thing, landscape design, how we mulch, even if it's just a donut. If I just spread just a nice, pretty, symmetrical donut of mulch around here, it looks nice. Maybe I cover it with pine straw. Sometimes a pine straw looks nice. I love pine straw, but I'll do the combination of both. I think that's fabulous. I'll also, as you'll notice as I talk about some of the ingredients, I use the leaves. I mean, a lot of us have tons of leaves that fall every fall. I didn't mean to say it like that, but I actually don't rake my leaves. I let all my leaves fall. I always have thought of my yard is a forest floor. I have 80 trees. Why not? I'm actually trying to grow a forest here. Those leaves are great, okay? Now that doesn't mean I don't want to have other things to supplement and add to the mulch, which is again what I'm going to talk more about. Some of these other things you could use. Okay. Before that, let me finish with the why we mulch. Nutrients added to the soil. If you put mulch, the mulch breaks down. If I put pieces of wood, like I'm going to do, it breaks down. That's really good for the soil. That's extremely important. Okay. Next thing, helps the roots absorb water. Okay. When you have lots of mulch, it prevents compaction. That's another thing you're kind of helping prevent. It helps absorb water. If I put a mulch all around here and then I'm watering this with the hose or heavy rains, if it's got good mulch, if it's got a little bit of a depression down here by the trunk, because we don't want to put the mulch up by the trunk, it's got a little bit of a depression, it pours down rain. If I have good mulch, then all the ground underneath the mulch is staying moist, okay? So, and just in general, when you have heavy rains or you're watering heavily, if I'm watering and I don't have any mulch, the water will just wash away. Sometimes it'll wash away the dirt, it'll erode a little bit. Sometimes you'll get frustrated and just not even bother watering, okay? So the goal here, and with what you see momentarily when I do this makeover, is I can do, once I've done my mulch, when I put the leaves and I put the mulch on top of that, and I put the rocks, you're gonna see me put rocks right around the trunk of the tree. That's so that when I'm either pouring a bucket of water, I'm spraying water, or it is dumping water. When it does that, this tree is absorbing the water. It's not washing away. I'm keeping it. Also, as soon as the rain is over, I quit watering. Guess what? It's not evaporating. Okay, those are just some of the things. And I didn't even finish. Two more things, real quick. Protect the roots from the sun's heat and UV. This tree is not really getting hammered with sun, although if you can see, and if you don't right now, maybe you will in a second, there's a huge white oak trunk that's probably 200 or 300 pounds. It's been there for at least 5 years, maybe 10. Okay, I put this tree trunk here just because I was like, I'm going to use this one of these days. I hadn't even planted this oak tree. This oak tree came 2 or 3 years later, and I said, aha, this is a great idea. I'm going to plant this tree really close to this big chunk of wood. That means nobody's going to walk through. It also means the sunshine coming from that direction, it can't even hit it. I've got like a 3 or 4 foot piece of wood here that gives this tree shade in the critical root zone every single day. That's awesome. Okay. And again, all the pieces of wood that I'm going to add, it's preventing the sun from hitting the ground. It's preventing it from evaporating. Okay. So this is a common theme, whatever I'm using. Last thing on my list for why we mulch is to protect the roots from paw traffic. Okay. I say paw traffic because I've got dogs. Okay. This front yard, I don't have dogs running through my yard aggressively, so I'm not really that worried about it. And I'm not really that worried about a dog peeing on my tree. Although, if a dog pees on a tree enough, that's not necessarily a good thing. So it actually can be something to discourage the dog from peeing on the tree. In my backyard, to explain my point better, um, in my backyard, I throw the ball, fetch, okay? If I throw the ball, and just throw the ball, the dog is carrying through the yard, potentially shredding through right up close to a tree, damaging roots. Okay. I even had one of my dogs run through a tree and actually snap it. It was a young tree, maybe 5 or 6 feet tall. Maybe it'd only been in the ground for a year or two. And there it was, snapped, done, finished. Okay. So I was thinking of ways, how can I discourage dogs from running through? It doesn't even have to be a piece of wood. I was going to get up, but I won't. Sometimes I end up using even something that's not even organic. I might use a piece of yard art. I have a piece of iron that I got at M Park Festival. That's something beautiful that can kind of stick in the dirt. And I might stick that right here in front of the tree in such a way that no one's going to walk through. Okay. Because it's not just walking into the tree. I don't really want anyone. Well, that's okay. I don't really want anyone walking a lot around this tree. For someone to walk by this tree once, it's no big deal. But lots of traffic around the base of your tree. If you have a big tree, you wouldn't want to set up a dinette table and picnic table and have all the kids' toys all around the base of a big tree, because you're encouraging lots and lots of stomping and compaction. Okay. I'm not going to go into compaction. It's a term that you can look up and read about. It's really interesting. It basically means you're pressing down the soil again and again and again, meaning you have less oxygen and you have less space in the dirt, meaning the roots don't grow we'll just say they don't grow as well. And also when you have heavy rains, the water doesn't absorb the water as well if it's really, really compacted, okay? So some of what I'm doing is preventing compaction, okay? That's not even on my list, but that is related to traffic, okay? Anyway, so that's my review of why we mulch, how we are on time. All right, cool. So the next thing I was going to show, and we might go ahead, we're gonna move the camera, is quickly run behind me, and it's not like my pile of supplies, which is what we're gonna have a look at. You don't need to see my pieces of wood necessarily, or my rocks, okay? But these are not huge rocks, okay? But this rock, in a second, I'm going to use up close to the base of the tree, okay? I want you to see that, see how I place it. I might even water my tree, and so you can see what I'm talking about, because a lot of the mulching has to do not just with preventing evaporation, but it is for when I'm watering the tree. I don't want to have to water the tree like every day. If it's a drought, I want to think that tree's all right. It can go for a week or even two. I can go out of town on vacation even, and it can endure that, because not only have I watered it, but I've got such great coverage of mulch that tree's set, okay? Anyway, so I just want to point out, I've got stones. I put big ones and small ones, okay? There's not a lot of small stuff here. I even threw a couple bricks here, okay? These bricks, this is not exciting. And in terms of what looks good around your tree, bricks sometimes aren't the best choice, okay? But then again, if you're lacking anything or any big rocks, and you just planted a new tree, guess what? When I have a young tree, I'll put these two bricks on either side of the trunk, just to discourage any squirrels digging. I remember when I first started this, it had to do with planting things even in a pot, and the squirrels kept going in and digging up my plant. I mean, goodness, they would dig down and pull up the roots sometimes, okay? On a bigger tree, a squirrel's not gonna uproot your tree, no doubt, but it's still the same idea that I don't want anybody messing with my tree. I got those roots looking really, really nice, okay? Which reminds me of something else I want to mention, which maybe I'll mention in a second, but let's stick with the rocks. We'll stick with the wood. This is all dead wood. They're either fallen branches in my neighbor's yard. When I see branches in my neighbor's yard, I go over there and grab them. I'll bring them over. I'll use them. Maybe I'll use them in my fire pit even, but I'm going to grab them because I might use them around my tree. These big trunks are a white oak that unfortunately had to get cut down the end of last year. I kept a ton of the wood. I don't think we're going to do it today unless we have time. I've got huge wheels of white oak of this tree, which, I mean, my heart breaks that I lost that tree, but it's pretty cool that how I've used them in the back. I've got them set up in a line, 4 huge wheels that are each one's 200 or 300 pounds, and they're in a line. And I've actually created a little bit of a design feature. It's not for everyone. Not everyone wants a yard with wood in their yard. I totally appreciate that. You don't have to put chunks of wood around your tree, but if you've got maybe some spots in your yard, can do it. Okay, so I don't know. I think I might go ahead. The idea was to show you my Oh, I know one more thing. Mulch. I've got some bales of mulch. For those of you who've done volunteer projects, you've obviously seen huge piles of mulch. Okay, I've got these. Do I have to use them? No, but I'm going to use them. I love this stuff. It's great, but that's not all I'm going to use. I've got a wheelbarrow here, which is a whole bunch of leaves, okay? The most important thing wasn't that I have to use this, but it's good stuff. When you water that, it slows down the water, absorbs the water. It's beneficial, and I've got tons of it. Why not? So we're going to put that on the tree. We're going to put some mulch on top of that, and then I'm going to use some of the wood to create kind of a cool design. I've got throughout my yard, which is probably a little hard to see, I've got pathways everywhere. Like I didn't have grass, and I couldn't help but say, why can't my yard look like when I go on a hike? Like when I walk through the woods, I love that you can walk through paths. Okay, so I've just repurposed the wood all over, and there's paths going all around in circles. Even though I've only got a third of an acre, if you come to my yard, it feels like an arboretum. That's what I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be a learning space. And one of my final things that I even say on here, I'm hoping some of you come over and see my yard sometime, because I'd love to share. Yeah, I'd love you to see it, and I'd love to come see your yard also. So anyway, what time we got right now? 10:30, right on time. Okay, makeover.
Hey,
Already told you what. Michelle, go ahead if you want to.
myself, what type of mulch are you using, and where do you get it?
That's a good question. So this is this is a pine tree. Okay, there was a neighbor down the street. I guess one of the pointers people sometimes I've had them say, how do you get mulch? Like, how do you schedule it? You absolutely can call tree companies sometimes, and you can ask for them. Do they have any scheduled work in your neighborhood? And if so, could they potentially drop a truckload in your house, at your house, not in your house? And so I'm just kind of aware whenever I'm in the neighborhood and I hear chainsaws, which is just horrible. But when I hear chainsaws, I do think about, hey, sad there's a tree coming down, but maybe there'll be some mulch, and I need some mulch. I try and get a pile of mulch at least every year or two, and I mulch all my trees throughout my yard, all through the pathways. And just to note, when I'm mulching the pathways, I'm not just doing that just for the sake of the path. It's because I've got 80 trees in my yard. My pathways are the critical root zone. I've got a southern red oak right behind Andrew that we won't try and show. It's too big. The roots of it are out, 20 and 30 and 40 feet from the base of this tree. So this entire area is mulched. I'm always adding pieces of wood. If I've got a big chunk of wood, I'll go put it somewhere strategically around something growing in my yard, which is what I'm hoping you guys do, or girls. Anyway, so I'm going to jump in and I'm going to try and do I don't know if I can do a makeover in 5 minutes or so, but as I'm doing this, I may talk a little bit. I may let Michelle talk a little bit. If Andrew wants to, yeah, and if anyone else asks questions, I know Michelle was looking to answer most of them at the end, but you can send them and maybe she'll ask. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some leaves. I'm just going to, you know what, that's going to be difficult. We're just going to do old school, okay?
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
What's the orange marker on the ground? Do you want to share that with them?
Yeah, all right, before I do my quick leaf thing, let's pan over really quick, Andrew. I put this marker just because, I don't know, I think most people, like when I see a tree, certainly a tree that's only 8 or 9 feet tall, they would probably do a small donut and only come out 2 or 3 feet. And in truth, the critical root zone is this area that's closer, okay? This area out here by the orange tape, the roots aren't quite as important, but I don't want to go digging and planting something here. That is something that I'm going to talk about in a second, about vegetation. Okay, right now I've cleared this out. I've gone ahead and we had Virginia creeper growing in here. I tried to pull it up. Anything I pulled up, I don't just start carrying up roots. I want to be careful because you've got the roots of the trees. So in general, I'm not stomping around in here and I'm not ripping anything up. Okay. Anyways, back to the orange line. This was just kind of a makeshift a marker for where the roots are going out to. Okay. And for anyone, most of you maybe have heard, or some of you maybe have heard something called the drip line. It's the distance that is most furthest out from the trunk. Okay, it's where you can usually take a guess of where the roots are growing out to. So since I've got the leaves coming out here, it's a good guess the roots are coming out about that distance. If it's a container grown tree and you just planted it like last year, guess what? The roots they're probably not already out here. Okay. And something else I said I was going to mention, it is the planting. I don't want to get into planting today, but I do want to point out that when we're talking about the critical root zone and roots growing through this space and the importance of this space, I just want to call out that when you plant a new tree, it is imperative you're breaking up the root ball of the tree such that the roots kind of look like my hair, okay? They're going out like the sunshine. They're, I don't want to say going every which way like my hair. They're coming outwards. And so when you plant this tree, don't plant it too deep, just a reminder. But when you plant it, like I will strategically and I will lay out the roots so that they're coming and going in a good direction. My goal is those roots for them to grow out this way. The more that your roots are, the more they grow out, the healthier they grow, the bigger, the stronger. This makes for a much healthier, happier tree. And I know a lot of you, when you plant a tree, it can't not cross your mind that you don't want to grow a tree and have it later fall in the house. You don't, I mean, there's this forever fear of trees falling. So in the name of healthy trees that live long and are strong and don't ever hurt anyone, I think it's another reason why talking about this space and what I'm talking about today is so important. Because, you know, you planted a tree is great, but if that tree doesn't live long term, then it's kind of a bummer. It kind of defeats the purpose. You know, I'm hoping that most of the folks that are watching today are excited. When you plant a tree, you get excited. I know every single tree in my yard is my baby, and I'm excited about it. And I want all of them to have awesome killer root zones. So anyways, all right, enough of that. I'm probably behind, so we're gonna try and go pretty fast. I'm just gonna do a quick layer of leaves. These go blowing. I won't have some. Feel free and ask questions as I'm doing this, but so I'm just doing a light layer of this. Sometimes when I have leaves, I know they're good for the tree, so I'm always throwing in extra leaves. If I've got a pile of leaves, I will wander around the yard and I will look for a tree that could use a little love. Okay, so anyway, so I put a layer of mulch. I'm hoping 3 bales of mulch will be enough. And as you notice, or if you could please notice, I am spreading this mulch very, very wide. And like I said, the whole yard's kind of mulch, but I'm not going up close to the trunk. And one more of these. Sorry for my sound effects. Okay. One thing I've always noticed, and when people do mulching, they'll build this donut up huge. It'll be like this tall, which not necessarily the best thing, only because when you build a really tall wall of mulch, it kind of tends to fall down in on the trunk. Okay, this isn't even close to tall, okay? But as you can see, I'm not putting any mulch up close. Can I get closer here? Absolutely. It wouldn't hurt anything to get a little bit closer, okay? And I could certainly put some more mulch. I've got let me see. But this is fine. Some ways, I think if you do a nice, even, like if it rains really hard, I don't know, this looks good. I like this. Okay, next thing. I'm gonna throw some rocks in here. Okay, we'll just start with that. I didn't plan out where I'm gonna put rocks, but I'm gonna put that rock up close to the trunk just to protect the root zone. Put that one there. That's not the best looking. Let's see. Do that. Now, if you put these rocks out here in the external around the edge, that would be fine also. You're still creating a good space underneath the rock for the tree.
Hey, Scott,
Okay.
I have a very good question here.
Yeah, go for it.
If you get mulch from a neighbor yard or maybe a tree cutting company, have you ever had to worry about disease or pests being in that mulch that could affect the trees in your yard? Do you use it?
No, I agree. I think it's a really is a great question. I think it's a little more difficult to. I don't know if I need this rock here. You don't know, and I don't have the expertise to speak to tree diseases that might be passed. I certainly have never experienced any tree getting. I mean, trees in general are just, if they're happy and healthy, I really don't see any, like any of the dying wood I've found that's got something growing on it, whether it be mushrooms or some sort of fungus. I mean, it's just breaking down that dead wood. I think most of those organisms, they're just eating the dead wood. And I'll go ahead and speak to something else that if I'd be surprised if someone doesn't ask about, and that is termites. Okay, I think sometimes when you grab dead wood, you may have termites that may be under that piece of wood. I guess I'll just say that, termites are natural. I mean, they're in the environment. They serve a purpose of breaking down the wood so we can go back into the soil. I mean, it's just natural. I don't even know if I should, I hate to not speak to termites because I think sometimes people ask about it, but I guess one thing I do is I know when I do plant a tree, first of all, I'm not usually planting a tree up really close to my house anyways. This tree's way out in the yard. If I'm putting a piece of wood, like when I talk about how I'm placing the wood, it usually is more like this, where I'm either creating a line. And so I'm going to go ahead and continue this, but on the subject of, I don't want to just not answer your question about, I guess the answer is I'm not worried about disease. I just, I'm not saying it can't happen. I don't know any instances where
But you
there's a
haven't,
problem there.
so Scott, you haven't experienced that in your own experience, in your own.
No, I mean, yeah, no, I haven't. I just, I don't, yeah, but if you have a house, when you have a tree, I don't usually put big pieces of dead wood up close to the house. That more is a termite thing. In terms of health wise, I don't know of any issues, but it's, I'm sure it's possible, but I don't think it's a major concern.
And there's another question here, Scott. The question is, how frequently do you mulch? Does timing varies by season? And this is considering a typical Atlanta weather.
How often do I mulch? Um,
Yes.
I think it's usually based on if the trees need it. I mean, I think in general, when I spread this whole load of mulch around my yard, it's not going into every inch of my property, but it's all over. I mean, that's going to make me feel good about my mulch situation and about my tree situation for probably a year. I mean, but I really do try and get a mulch pile every year or so. The wood breaks down. I can always find somewhere to use it. I think in general, mulching a tree, if you do a donut sort of style mulching around your tree, I think, or any of the ones that, if you've done volunteer work and you put a load of mulch and a bucket or two of mulch around it, it just, not only does it break down, but it kind of just, I think just time and people, and certainly for trees that are on the street, there's traffic. If the mulch falls off, it falls into the trunk, it breaks down. I think there is a good need to do it at least every year, if not every 6 months or so. And when you do mulch it, like if you're doing it on a regular basis, I think it becomes a little more of a, you just want to give it a little bit of love. Like, you know, you just got to go back to it, add a little bit of mulch. If you see a spot where the mulch is all up on the trunk, you get it off the trunk. You see some weeds that are growing in there, getting kind of close to the trunk. Even if you're at you're on public space and you see a healthy tree and you see a bunch of something growing really close to the trunk that's not good, I'll reach down and grab it. You know, so anyways, I'm getting off subject. As you see, I just kind of decided with these big logs to just create a line. Okay, now underneath all these pieces of wood, you will have a pretty darn healthy, happy bit of soil. This is just gonna, I think, make this tree happier and healthier. I think one reason why that tree is happy in general is because of the existing piece of white oak that is sitting there on that back side, not only protecting it from the sun, but it's breaking down, and it's really awesome. This is me doing this right now is, I don't know, I'd like to think this isn't too crazy if I'm adding pieces of wood to create a semicircle. Sometimes I found that I'll use pieces of wood and do different designs with the wood. I guess I'll try a little bit of that real quick. That did not work.
Scott, would you be
Yeah.
moving the logs, the location of the logs as the tree is growing? Maybe it will help.
I think it's a good question. I think potentially, you know, if when I, like, after I've done this tree, you know, and potentially maybe even added some more piece of wood, I've got one more big piece of white oak that I can throw over here. But like, this is not the most, like, when I'm done with it, I've tried to, I would try to pick really my most favorite rocks, and I would place them in such a way where it kind of looked cool. You know, this is, I think this looks all right. I could certainly do better. I'm not going to try and keep redoing it. I think what I wanted to show is once I do this, maybe I'll even do this. I almost want to see. I'm putting that brick there. Again, just that space right around there. We'll go ahead and do a little quick water, okay? Everybody's like, you didn't come today to watch me water my tree. But you can see, once I douse this, I mean, I could sit here and water this forever, and I've kind of set it up to where all the water is going where it's supposed to go. You know, I don't know. I'm not saying that you can't do a regular mulch circle and still achieve good watering. I think and one of the things I wanted to show was using these big pieces of rock. I mean, instead of these rocks, I could have put a pretty big log within like 5 or 6 inches of the trunk. That wouldn't have hurt it. Now, like, to the question of how often do I move the wood? Well, if I put something up pretty close to the trunk, like when I first planted this tree, I put other rocks all around this tree. Okay, before I even did this today, I had to pull those rocks out. Anyways, as this tree gets bigger, these rocks will slowly get really close to the trunk, and I will want to pull them back. Okay, as it gets older, maybe I probably don't need big rocks here at the base. I think when you have a young tree that you're watering a lot, that you're really trying to protect and take care of, it really helps to have these rocks here. Now, if I put a piece of wood like this, if I made, let's say, if I had like tons of sticks, and I've got other examples, other trees, I actually will put stick. I will just create this huge, almost design of sticks that are following this line, this semicircle that I've got going. You know, when I water, like, because I think most of us know that when you water a tree, doing slow watering is great. So I remember doing it like this, where I've got the hills going that way a little bit. I'll do this. I'll use the rock for lots of reasons. It kind of disperses the water as I'm watering, and I realize that it just kind of spreads it around more, and you don't get erosion. And what was I going to say? You kind of see. I just remember wanting to leave a hose, and if I had just a hose sitting there, it would kind of go to the same spot. But if I use rocks or even wood, I could get, I don't know, I could get the water to spread out a little bit more, because I realized I don't want to just water up here. I want to water back here. So even if I do this on the piece of wood, it's still trickling down and going toward the tree. That's something that most of you all probably already know, but you want to water on the high side. And so it's certainly one of the things. Yeah, let me before we get, where are we on time?
Yeah, it's 10:50. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to type it on the chat. We could stay a little longer to answer more questions. And Scott, you might want to also mention, like, if there's any factors, additional
Yeah.
factors to consider.
Yeah, totally. Almost last section was just factors that I do consider, that you should consider, that I think are important in terms of what you might do here. One, if you're on a hill, or no, the first question is, where is the tree? Okay. Is it on a hill? If it's on a hill, I really find that having rocks or big chunks of wood can help me, because if you just put a donut circle around a tree you put on a hill, a lot of times whenever you water it, the water just goes. Like, you can't keep it on the tree. I really feel like it's not, because if you do thick mulch like this, that doesn't necessarily solve your problem. But if I put rocks and I strategically place the rocks, I can make it so that tree is, especially on a hill in the hard sun, is able to absorb the water and keep the water better with these bigger materials. You just, when you have mulch, it evaporates faster than when you have solid pieces. Okay. Let me see. And also, in terms of factors to consider, is where is the tree? Is it in the sun? I mean, that's a no-brainer. But when I see a tree that's got a little mulch circle around it out in the middle of a big yard all day long in the sun, I'm just like, whoa, you like. I mean, maybe it'll be okay. There's certain species that they'll do just fine. Okay. But go wider, make those circles wider. I'm not saying you've got to put chunks of wood or rocks on all your trees, but I will say that if you've got younger trees, especially in those early days, it'll make watering a lot easier, and you'll get that tree, I think, growing well and established earlier on. I already talked about traffic around the tree. If you're gonna have lots of traffic, whether it be dogs or kids, use these big things, rocks, pieces of wood. I really wish I had time to show you the pictures in the backyard of how I've got tree. Like, I make like when I put a big piece of wood, it's almost like, ooh, I'm gonna plant a tree right next to that big piece of wood. It's calling. It's a great place for a planting. A piece of wood, a big piece of wood it's going to be there for 20 years. Is a nurse log, basically. I think we've all heard the term nurse log, and that's kind of what I'm going for a lot of these cases. Two more things. I already talked about water some, so I'll continue water, and then one more thing. Water. It really, I guess I was going to tell kind of a story that when I first started this using rocks and wood, which maybe it's not that exciting. I hope this is slightly exciting, but the reason was all about the water. I was planting trees, and I was getting frustrated because watering was difficult with buckets of water, or the tree was way out far, like in the yard, and it was hard to get a hose all the way out there. And of course, when it didn't rain for 6 weeks straight last year or the year before, um, which happens in Atlanta, it's you. I was worried about water. Even when I was watering, I couldn't water it enough because it was getting so much sun. So I really think these things can really help you get through the droughts, and help you water more efficiently and more effectively. Last thing, what's growing around the tree? Okay, there's two things there. One, I did want to mention, which I mentioned before, low hanging limbs on the tree that you're actually working with, or other plants that are around. When you've got other plants growing around, whether you add them or they're already growing, don't forget about the role they play in providing shade for your tree. Okay, they're all working together, and on that same yeah, this trick. On that same note, in terms of low like the positive relationship that should exist and that can exist with the trees or the plants around your tree. It's not only the things that may be growing around or you might actually plant, it's also in this space in the critical root zone. I just wanted to speak briefly on this space. And if you've got like there are species of plants that are growing in this area that are fine to leave. Even the Virginia creeper that I have growing vines growing through here, they're not hurting the tree. Occasionally they'll try and climb up the tree so I can clip them, but that's not a major concern. If you have ivy, well, actually that ivy is creating shade, and that might in some ways be an okay environment. But of course we know what ivy does. It goes and it goes and it will climb your tree. So I absolutely am going to say you got to get rid of the ivy, but be careful. Be careful removing it. Yeah, just be careful removing it. And the other thing I would say is I've got numerous examples of where I've got big trees and small trees where the things that are growing with it, don't forget about the relationship of roots. You know, just generally the roots of anything growing in this root zone. And just like even this big red oak that's got its root zone coming out 30 and 40 feet, all these plants around here growing, their roots are going down and they're intermingling with the roots of the big oak, and they're all helping each other. I think it is, I don't want to discourage planting other things. I do want to say, don't go digging holes and planting things in the critical root zone, I should say. When I look at this big red oak, or I look at the white oak behind me, and think about any of the gardeners around the city that want to plant something in their garden and want to plant a whole row of azaleas or some other species. It really pains me if they're just going to town digging and tearing up in the critical root zone of some big mature tree. Big mature trees are while they're not going to die overnight because you've done some damage there, please be careful. If you're going to plant something in the critical root zone, in the root zone in general, just keep it small. I know if I'm going to plant something, then I will plant something small and I will take care of it and I will show some patience for when it grows bigger. And I absolutely love these things growing with the trees, and I love other things growing underneath the trees. But just be careful in your effort to have a green understory. Don't start digging and planting. That's just not good for your big trees or your young trees. I think that's all I was going to go over. Factors to consider. Oh no, I said dig wide hole. And that was more about planting, but yeah, wide mulch, wide hole, everything. Make it wide. We want these roots to come out wide.
I wanted to mention, Scott, it's 11 a.m. now. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have a few questions that we want to answer. So we're hoping everybody it's inspired by Scott's passion for trees and planting and taking care of them. Scott, do you want to add anything else before we move into the questions?
I had a couple of things that are listed under call to action. They're pretty quick and easy, but I can either save that for after if you want, just as a closing note. It's not if you want, or unless you'd like me to go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
All right. I already said that. Big trees need mulch and love also. Just because they're old doesn't mean their roots don't need love. Their root zones are vast, so usually could benefit from these same ideas. Explore natural options for taking care of your trees. Bags of pine bark. I don't know. I'd prefer not encourage plastic bags to get mulch, but I realize that sometimes is the only option, so that's fine. But try and explore natural options and utilize some of the wood around your yard. Let me see. Last two things. One, visit my arboretum. I actually call this an arboretum. I have a sign over on the side street, and I would love to see some of you visit one of these days. And last thing was, yeah, I like this one. One thing I'd like for you guys to go away with, or y'all to go away with, is to mulch a neighbor's tree or even a public tree which needs it. Like, just be aware. If you see a neighbor's tree that it doesn't have any mulch, sneak. I don't want to encourage people sneaking in other people's yards. And I'm not saying you can't ask them or offer, but I know that I got a lot of enjoyment from walking up the hill from my neighbor Jose's yard. I mean, he sent me, I'll tell you the story yesterday, real quick. He texted me yesterday pictures of all his trees that he had just remulched. Okay, I didn't particularly like, he used bag mulch, but it makes me feel good that he sent me pictures of his mulch, and then I went over to visit to inspect the mulch and celebrate what he had done. Like, he's excited about taking care of his trees. He's asking for guidance on how much to water, how long to water, and how they're doing. And that makes me feel so good that I can share in that. So, I mean, I want to, for any of you that can reach out to me or want to reach out to me, that's what I love doing. I like helping anyone have healthy trees. That's all. So I'll stop there and give it back to you, Michelle.
Thanks so much, Scott. This is great. So we have a few questions here. And I just wanted to mention this class is being recorded. So we will send the recording to all the attendees and participants. So if you need to leave now, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support, and we will stay around. Scott will stay around to answer some questions.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, first question, where else can you get the mulch?
Where else can you get the mulch? Actually, I do know that if it's not, like, I guess we're not going to suggest, we'll say big box stores that have mulch in bags. I think in general, there's not a lot of options. If it's not a tree place, then I know that there are places, I can think of one place on, I want to say near Oakland Cemetery, where if you go to a place that has rocks and sells stones and gravel and dirt, they almost always have mulch. So I know that's one option for getting larger amounts of mulch. If you're just talking about one tree, then I'll certainly give you a pass if you buy some mulch in a bag. So I don't want to guilt trip folks for doing that. So.
Sure. There's another question here. If I have tree roots that are already exposed because of erosion on a hillside, what are good ways to deal with that?
That's funny. That's a good one. I know one of my neighbors I took a picture of the other day, and you can tell where the lawnmower's even gone over some of these horizontal roots where the lawnmower's actually even damaged the tops of the roots. In general, you don't want to bury, like when you have parts of it's called the root flare. When you have the fingers, as I call them, that kind of protrude from the base of a trunk of a tree. In general, I don't put mulch up on that. I think to help with the situation you've got, you would basically go for a really wide mulch bed. And like for those parts of the tree that are kind of exposed, I mean, I don't know. I don't really like to bury them, but I'm still going for, but if you've got I'm guessing this is a big tree, the part that's exposed, I'm guessing isn't but 10, 15 feet out. Well, just, if it's a bigger tree, I mean, the root zone is going out much further than that. I think you can still do the tree a lot of benefit by trying to get a lot of mulch. When you've got a big tree, you can put down a lot of mulch. So I don't know. I probably didn't answer that question very well, but certainly be happy to take a text or a phone call, or yeah,
So in
maybe ask.
general, mulching is a good solution. So at least we're not um, mowing on top of those roots.
And I mean, I do like to, you know, like my goal at that point is trying to suppress the grass. You know, if whether I'm using, you know, more like I have an electric weed eater, you know, that I'm very, very careful with. There are things that I might do that, yeah, it's not only about suppressing the grass, but yeah, sorry, not the best answer there. Sorry.
Sure. And I guess we can share in the follow-up email, we can share your contact information, Scott, in case
Yeah,
someone wants to reach at you. And
yep.
another question here is how far out do you recommend protecting the roots of the trees that are 100 feet tall in urban areas? There are no buildings within 100 feet of the trees, but there are relatively small pieces of the land.
Relatively small pieces of.
They are on a relatively small piece of land.
Yeah, I think that's something I've seen a whole lot. It's a great question. When you do a tree planting, certainly with Trees Atlanta, you sometimes have very, very limited space. You know, really, all you can do is mulch the exposed area that you can. Uh, as much as you can is great, you know, but don't just dump a huge pile of mulch that ends up getting caked on the trunk in the name of putting some mulch on the tree. I feel like sometimes in parking lots and grocery store parking lots, you have this itsy bitsy piece of land and the tree has been mulched over and over at the base. And at that point it's become, I don't want to say a lost cause, but it's not a great situation. I mean, and it, you know, there's not a lot you can do. You can't break up the cement. You can't gain more land to mulch. So, um, yeah, mulching what you can. Yeah, just doing the best you can. That's really, I guess I'll go with that.
And so, Scott, you mentioned that you're trying to create an arboretum. What's the question is like, where is yours? Where is your arboretum? Where are you?
I, no, I am you. I'm not saying if you'll notice me flying by in Claremont, since people drive pretty fast. I'm about 5 houses south of La Vista, on Claremont Road. So, but I'm north of the VA hospital. You know, I've got lots of different things. I've got some of the stuff on the inner side, maybe a little more uh, in need of shade, but I've got all the perimeter spots, whether it be on Claremont or on the side street, get hammered with sun. And so a lot of what I'm doing in the Arboretum is trying to find, and I think I've been really successful finding species of plants that do really well in harsh environments. I'd be more than happy to I think even one of the other uh, workshops I'm doing is to try and talk about what are those species that work great, because one thing in my arboretum I've done is I've gone all native, except for the few invasive species that might always be trying to enter in. Everything in my yard pretty much is native. It excites me when I can find species of plants that can endure these long droughts and really, really hot weather, and do well. You know, no doubt I'm mulching them, but the things that I'm talking about are things that even if you don't do a great job mulching, they still do pretty well. I've got lots of examples of things, which I'm always, that's one of the, I think the wonderful things about some of the things I've done, finding species that do well in really harsh environments, that do well on really steep hills, for instance. So, yeah, we can talk more about that either in my other workshop or maybe even if you reach out to me specifically.
That's great. And then our last question is, would you remove poison ivy from young trees?
I carefully do. I'm actually, I wouldn't say I love, my phone's about to go dead. You still hear me, Michelle?
Yes, I'm still here.
Let me switch real quick. I'm sorry. Just, I don't want it to go dead for these last few moments.
Mm-hmm.
1 second.
Are you with me?
Yes, we're here.
All right, sweet. All right, ask the question one more time, please.
If you will remove poison ivy from trees.
Yeah, poison ivy. I'm a master at identifying poison ivy. I walk around my yard, even though something like poison ivy, it blends with other species of plants like Virginia creeper, where it will grow in the middle of it, like it knows what it's growing through. I always try and remove it just because poison ivy it gets me pretty bad. So I can appreciate trying to get rid of it. It does not grow aggressively up the side of trees. It's not a threat, I think, to the tree. I do usually try and go ahead and clip it out and remove it carefully. More just because if it keeps going, you'll just start seeing it more in your yard. As it gets older, its fruit it'll produce fruit and potentially just spread more. So I discourage it, even though I actually think it's a beautiful plant. So, and it is a native plant.
That's right. It is a native plant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. I think everybody appreciated and shared like your passion.
Cool.
Please tune for the next 2 workshops that Scott is going to be leading. In June, we're going to be talking more about native plants and why most of his arboretum is native. And then we're also going to be talking about how to identify invasive plants. Thank you, Scott, and thank you everybody who's joining us today. Have a great weekend. A great long weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Andrew.